If you're a true Harry Potter fan, then I suspect that you, like me, had an impending sense of dread as you neared the final pages of the final book. After all, it was the end of an era, and as far as I could tell at the time, there wasn't much new Harry Potter content on the horizon, besides a few movies, of course. These books were released over a 10-year period spanning my entire adolescence, and needless to say, they were pretty important to me. Every release felt like a cultural event, and every chapter felt like stepping back into a world that, at times, felt more real than reality itself. So when I turned that final page of Deathly Hallows, I couldn't help but feel hollow. Not because the ending was bad, far from it, but because I wasn't ready to leave. And sure, over the years we got more content, the Fantastic Beasts films, the Cursed Child play, and various other things, but none of it quite scratched that same itch. None of it picked up where Deathly Hallows left off in a way that felt fully satisfying. But what if there was another book? A book that gave us real clarity on the aftermath of Voldemort's downfall. A story that didn't skip ahead 19 years to a peaceful train station, but instead started in the rubble of Hogwarts when the war was over. A story that could replace the words "all was well," not to placate us, but to finally show us what came next. That's the story I want to explore. And thanks to the help of AI, we can now write that story. A continuation of the Deathly Hallows that picks up the story not long after Voldemort utters his final breaths. But before we do this, we need to set some serious ground rules. So here are the parameters I provided for the AI model. First, keep the writing style consistent. That means sticking to J.K. Rowling's narrative voice, third person, slightly whimsical, but grounded. Second, preserve existing Harry Potter lore as best as possible. No major retcons. You can introduce new things, sure, but don't rewrite what's already been established. Third, make sure the dialogue sounds like the characters we know. If it doesn't feel like something Harry, Hermione, or Ron would actually say, it's out. Fourth, no Cursed Child lore. We're treating that play as non-canon unless I specifically say otherwise. I know a lot of you will appreciate this one. And finally, stick to the magic system. That means spells, potions, and magical rules need to be consistent with the books. The next thing I want to clearly establish is where the story picks up. We will be continuing the story from the end of chapter 36, The Flaw in the Plan, and effectively completely scrapping the last segment, which briefly explores what happens to the trio 19 years later. Instead, we'll be going back to the moment Voldemort falls, because that's where this story begins. Beyond these parameters, I'm not going to micromanage the AI too much. I want an authentic result, even if not everything is perfect. And that's partially because I'm curious to see what it produces and if any of it is remotely usable. I also won't be continuing the story too much, because first I want to see if this story is even worth continuing. That's something you can let me know down in the comment section below. This video is just going to get us started. The final thing I want to mention is that I'll be feeding some key aspects of the final chapter into the AI to help inform the story ahead. So without further ado, let's pick up where we left off, at the end of chapter 36. Chapter 37, The Silence After. Harry stepped through the doorway of the headmaster's office and into the dim corridor beyond. The torches along the wall flickered softly, casting long shadows across the stone floor. For the first time in what felt like forever, he wasn't running. He wasn't hiding or fighting or bracing himself for something worse. His feet moved of their own accord, through corridors he knew better than any place in the world. And though his legs ached and his eyes burned with exhaustion, he didn't stop. Neither did Ron or Hermione, who followed silently behind him, as if the three of them knew there was still one last thing they needed to do before rest could find them. They reached the entrance to Gryffindor Tower. The fat lady, who had returned to her portrait, now looked very much the worse for wear. A large crack ran through the frame, and she appeared to be dabbing at a singed part of her dress, gave a start when she saw them. Oh my. Back already, are we? She said, her voice trembling with emotion. I knew you'd come through, dear. I knew it. Password? Harry hesitated, then softly he said, Victory. She swung open without another word. The common room was deserted, the fire burning low, casting flickers of orange light over the scorched walls and torn upholstery. A large crack ran through the window pane. Someone had hastily righted a toppled bookshelf, and a Gryffindor banner hung half-burned above the mantel. They climbed the stairs to the boys' dormitory without speaking. When Harry reached his bed, the one he'd slept in since he was 11, he pulled the hangings aside and sat down heavily. Ron did the same across from him, and Hermione, for once, didn't object to following them in. She sat beside Ron, curling her legs underneath her. There was a silence, thick but not uncomfortable. Then Ron said quietly, "It's really over, isn't it?" Harry nodded. No Horcruxes, no Voldemort, no Snape lurking about trying to kill Dumbledore. "I don't think he ever really wanted to kill Dumbledore," Hermione murmured. "No," Harry said, "he didn't." They sat in silence again, the weight of everything catching up to them in slow, dragging waves. Every name, every loss, every moment, from the forest, from the tower, from the year they'd spent running. "I still can't believe Fred," Ron's voice caught. Harry stared at the worn bedpost in front of him. "I know." Hermione reached out, took Ron's hand. He didn't pull away. A distant sound echoed from below, the faint chatter of people still gathered in the great hall, voices rising and falling like the lull of a sea storm finally beginning to ease. "We'll have to go to the funerals," Hermione said. "Fred, Tonks, Lupin. And Colin," Harry said. "And Lavender, I think." "And then what?" Ron asked. "What happens next?" Harry didn't answer right away. He lay back on the bed, arms folded behind his head, and looked up at the torn canopy above him. "We rebuild," he said finally. "We try to make sure it doesn't happen again." Hermione's voice was quiet but firm. "We fix the ministry, we protect Hogwarts, we help people recover." Ron sighed. "We get jobs, grow up." Harry gave a weak smile. "Speak for yourself." They laughed, a little too loudly, a little too desperately, but it felt good. For the first time in days, maybe longer, something resembling hope drifted in with the smoke curling from the fireplace downstairs. And somewhere, just beyond the cracked window of Gryffindor Tower, the sun continued its slow climb above the mountains, warming a castle that had survived another war. Chapter 38, The Weight of Morning. When Harry awoke, he wasn't sure at first where he was. The sunlight coming through the cracked window didn't feel real. Too warm, too soft, like something out of a memory. For a moment, he wondered if it was all a dream, if he'd wake up again to a tent, a mission, or the pull of the locket around his neck. But the ache in his bones told him the truth. The emptiness in his chest where Fred, Lupin and Tonks had once stood. And the silence, that particular absence of fear, told him something else. It was finally over. Across the room, Ron was still asleep, mouth slightly open, one arm draped off the side of the bed. His trainers lay kicked off at opposite corners of the room. Dean was curled in a chair by the fire, wand still clutched in his hand. Someone had draped a blanket over him. Harry sat up slowly and reached for his glasses. His wand, lay beside him on the nightstand, whole once more. He picked it up and held it loosely in his hand, just feeling the weight of it, a familiar comfort, a returned friend. He dressed quietly, not wanting to wake the others, and stepped out into the corridor. The castle was quieter than usual, but not silent. Somewhere deep below, he could hear the muffled clatter of dishes and the murmur of voices. House elves, most likely, already back at work. Some things never changed. He passed shattered statues, scorched tapestries, and blood-stained stone as he made his way down toward the Great Hall. The damage wasn't just physical. It clung to the air itself, a heaviness that lingered in the shadows. When he entered the hall, the tables were once again rearranged, this time to resemble something between a memorial and a makeshift war council. Long rows of chairs had been set up, and rows of white draped bodies lined the front. Fred, Tonks, Remus, Colin Creevey, barely older than a first year. Harry stopped walking. His feet refused to go any further. Harry. It was Kingsley. He stood near the dais, no longer in his tattered robes from the night before, but in a fresh set of deep purple ones that gave him a strange air of solemn authority. His gold hoop earring was gone. "Sorry," Kingsley said, stepping closer. "Didn't mean to startle you." Harry shook his head. "You didn't." "There'll be a memorial service this afternoon," Kingsley said quietly. "Not a funeral, not yet, but something for the families. Closure." Harry's eyes lingered on Fred's still form. "I don't know what to say." "You're not expected to," said Kingsley. "Just be there." There was a pause. "We're going to need you, you know," he added. "Not today, but soon." Harry turned to look at him. "I don't want a desk job," he said automatically. Kingsley gave a faint smile. Didn't think you would, but people will be looking to you, not just as a symbol, as someone who understands what was at stake, someone who can keep it from happening again. Harry didn't answer. He wasn't ready to think about the future. Not yet. Not with George somewhere upstairs, probably still unable to speak. Not with so many names yet to be written on gravestones. Kingsley gave him a pat on the shoulder and moved off, his deep voice already offering comfort to a pair of grieving parents nearby. Harry stood still for a long time. Then he walked the length of the hall and sat down beside Professor McGonagall, who was nursing a cup of tea, eyes red, but spine straight as ever. Without looking up, she said, "Mr. Potter." "Professor." A long silence. Then, "You'll stay for a while?" Harry nodded. "Yes, as long as I'm needed." She placed a cup down and turned to him. "I suspect that will be quite some time." And that's it for now. If you want me to continue the story, then let me know down in the comment section below. Also, how do you think the AI did? Until next time, remember, it does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live.